Good morning to all of you again. It's good to see you here and to welcome you and to again think of the Lord's work among you. To know that there is a plan and a way in which each one of you in the daily lives can honor Him with not only your responses but with the different relationships in which He's entrusted to you. And we trust that our time together can encourage what the Lord is about in each one of your hearts. So let's ask God's blessing on our time. Heavenly Father, thank you for these moments that we spend together. Thank you for the opportunity to share them together, to honor your word, and to focus on your name and your honor and your glory as a family of believers. So we ask your blessing on this time. Pray for you to continue your work in each heart that's gathered here today. In your name I pray. Amen.
Sounds to me like that'd be a great opportunity to move the Princeton Rock Fest out to the Oling Farm on June 1st. Well, 100,000 people out at your place. We'll see how you can handle that. So, okay. We're so thankful that you're here this morning. We went over to praise Him today. Let's all stand and sing.
Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way. From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way. From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high. You came from heaven to earth to show the way. From the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high. Your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight, no matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk I wish I could walk through. When you don't give me answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give me answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you.
Man, we're glad that you're here this morning. Would you take time to greet those standing around you?
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. There's nothing worth more that could ever come close. No thing can compare. You're our living and sing of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, there's nothing worth more that could ever come close. Nothing can compare. You're our living hope. Your presence, Lord. I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves, where my heart becomes free and my shame is undone. Your presence, Lord. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord. Your presence, Lord. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Let us become more aware of your presence. Let us experience the glory of your goodness. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. Come flood this place and fill the atmosphere. Your glory, God, is what our hearts long for, to be overcome by your presence, Lord.
Please be seated.
To all of you mothers, a happy Mother's Day earlier in this day. And often at Mother's Day, I want to just take a moment to thank you for the different ways in which you serve within your families and for the sacrifices you make for those in your home and those that you have cared for in the years gone by. I know that for me, probably it was my mother more than anyone else that helped me to come to grips with what it means to be, well, one of God's children. I was fairly young when on one ride to church on Wednesday night, I talked to my mom from the back seat to the front seat, and I asked her. I said, Mom, is my brother, is he a Christian? And she says, yes, I believe he's asked Christ into his heart. And I said, how about my sisters? Are they Christians? And she said, yes, I think they have asked Christ into their heart. I said, well, what about me? Am I a Christian? And she said, no, I don't think you've done that. And that was kind of the end of that conversation until later that night as I was being tucked into bed by my mom. I don't remember if she brought it up or if I brought it up again, but there with my mom, alongside my bed that night, I asked Christ into my heart. I'd love to say that was the end of the struggles and that was the last piece that had to happen, but really for me, from there on, there was lots of years of kind of wondering and doubting and asking Christ into my heart again and again and again. But it was really that time, right? I've often reminded myself that there's no reason in the world that the Lord doesn't hear the prayers of little boys at their mama's knees, right? For you, I know the stories are different. Not everybody has moms in their life in that same way that I, of course, did, and every mom is different. But God uses them for His purposes in our hearts and lives, and we ought to be thankful for the mothers that God has given to each one of us, no matter the challenges that they represent and the challenges that we represent to them. So today, I would ask for those of you that are moms, maybe you're a stepmom or grandma by now, some of you even great-grandmas, I'd ask that you just stand, and we're going to ask God's blessing on you. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for these women. Thank you for the strength and talents and blessings that they represent into the lives of their families. I thank you for the generations that have come before them, that have poured into their hearts and lives in different ways. Lord, I would ask for your blessing on them. Pray that they would be able to find within the challenges of each day your source of strength for them. That in the midst of the busyness, that they wouldn't miss the blessing of being able to serve in your name within their families. Lord, I would pray that they would know that what they do is significant within your sight and important within the world today. Lord, we ask that you would grant to them a sense of guidance within the frustrations of each day and the challenges that they deal with. Patience with the people that you put them in the midst of. Lord, would you continue to show your goodness out from their hearts into the world and family that they are in the middle of. Lord, I thank you for each one of these standing, and I would ask your sense of well done to grow in their hearts, that they can see the honor there is in serving you and serving their family. Lord, as they serve within their family, we know that they serve in many ways within their community, within the workplace. Lord, help them to know that what they do and whatever they do, whether in word or deed, it can all be done in a way that honors you. So, Father, this day we ask for your blessing on them. In your name, amen. I don't know if you noticed, but last week, in our working our way through the Gospel of Mark, we were talking about the storm, right? The storm on the Sea of Galilee, and last Sunday night, there was a storm, right? We really had quite the storm that came through with its little bit of damage, but more than that, quite a fright with all the tornado sirens going off. And I don't, of course, believe that that's a pattern, right? I don't think that preaching on the storm brought that storm in, but I don't know if it helped some of you survive the storm, reminded you that storms are part of life. And I especially don't want that to be a pattern, because today we don't talk about the storms, we talk about demonic activity, and certainly we don't want to encourage any of that and all of that. But I did want you to know that working our way through the Gospel of Mark, you see Jesus really encounters some things that reveal who he is. Who is he, right? He is the master of the storm. And he's the master of the forces of evil as we see it today. So in Mark goes from Mark chapter 41, right? They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him," to the story that we read in Mark chapter 5. Just a longer passage, so I encourage you to hold on. We'll make our way through it. It tells us this: Then they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. And this man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained, hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart, broke the irons on his feet, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. And the demon begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. And the herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep banks into the lake and were drowned. And those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by a legion of demons sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. And as Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. And Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. How much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So this is the story of the Gerasene demoniac, right? If you remember your King James, the Gerasene demoniac. Say that with me, Gerasene demoniac. Turn to the person around you and say, Gerasene demoniac, right? It's almost fun. Once you get it down, you have it. It's one of those fun things to say, Gerasene demoniac. I don't know. I've always thought that was the fun part of the story, was just saying the words. And while it may be that you recognize that's kind of a funny word to become the master of, it's really the story of a man in a terrible, terrible condition, right? This is a man with his own mother, right? He had a real family that he grew up in, that he came from. Well, it's a real guy. Really difficult condition. He's under real torment by these demons. And his situation is beyond the pale of what we see in any other person's life in Scripture. This guy is completely under the control of these evil forces in his life. And he becomes the poster child, really, of Jesus' impact, of his freeing work, how he comes into a person's environment. He changes what their experience in life is. He equips them for going a completely new direction in life. It's two kind of phases. One, Jesus frees him from evil and enables him to respond to what Jesus does. It's a picture, I think, of Jesus' authority. And in the story, we have two generic lessons. One is that we ought to be aware of Satan's power. I don't talk about Satan often. I don't preach much on evil spirits. But the reality of Scripture demonstrates their impact. And I think if you see what's going on in this person's life, you begin to recognize some of the trends within the world in which we live today. For our society today, evil is often seen as entertaining. People watch these movies about evil things happening. We see stories on television and even in our newspapers. The most stories that grip us are those stories in which evil itself seems to reign, that they rule our airways. People go into schools and they rampage. They shoot innocent ones there in the middle of classrooms, and they rivets our attention. And what's going on is that evil is allowed to reign. We see it. It becomes almost entertainment for us. A writer some years ago had noticed that and said, it's interesting how entertaining fictional evil can be. Evil that we just see at an arm's length becomes something that we're titillated by, that it gets our juices flowing, and we go, oh, that's really bad. Becomes attractive almost in a fictional kind of sense. Fictional good, on the other hand, is often seen as boring, right? We make fun of it at an arm's length. It's just so, well, not all that exciting. But in reality, it's just the opposite. That real evil, when we see it, becomes, well, ugly. It becomes distorting. It becomes distasteful when you actually come into grips with real evil. When you experience real good, it's something that you want to enter into. You want to invite into your heart and life. You want it to become normal. It's attractive and enjoyable. In this instance, we see how damaging and damning Satan's power has become in this one individual's life. So what's happening is Jesus has crossed the Sea of Galilee. We think he's probably in somewhere to the north of the sea, somewhere in Capernaum, and he ends up somewhere around that town of Gergesa, right? And there it is that Jesus encounters this man. Could have been that this man was well known across the whole region, that people used him as an illustration of, well, sin gone wrong, right? And Jesus might have been very well aware of this man and the demons in control of his life. For Satan's power is clearly on display in his life. In this man's life, Satan's power is illustrated, and we can see what's going on. Jesus had one time taught about the good shepherd. He illustrates himself as a good shepherd, and he illustrates Satan's work as a thief, right? A thief that comes only to steal and kill and destroy. When you think about Satan's activity in our world, and certainly in this story here in the Gospel of Mark, I want you to key in on that word destroy. To destroy. Satan uses his power to destroy it. Three things are really clear in his story. When he comes to destroy relationships. Notice where this man lives, right? This Gerasene demoniac lives among the tombs. He's more at home with the dead than the living. And for him, relationships have become completely impossible. That's Satan's story. That's what he wants to do. He wants to take the relationships within your lives, and he wants to come in and he wants to bring such dissension and destruction within them that the relationships, the influence, the growth, the good that God wants to bring about your relationship with the people around you is destroyed. It's illustrated in this man who runs around naked. No more clothes for this guy. Clothes are one of those things, right? They're one of those parts of us that identify us with the people around us. A couple of years ago, I traveled to Burkina Faso. And while I was there, I saw that among the pastors that we visited, I saw they were all wearing shirts that looked the same. They were all wearing these bright green shirts with this printing on it that was cloth that they had printed for a recent anniversary that the church within Burkina Faso had celebrated. And so one day we were at a large bookstore, Christian bookstore, the only bookstore kind of in that whole region. And I noticed that they had stacks of this cloth left over. And so I bought some bright green cloth and brought it home with me. And after some time, I asked Donna if she wouldn't sew it up into clothes for me. She made me a shirt. She made Jeannie a skirt out of that one piece of cloth. And the next year, I went to our biannual General Council gathering, and came a day, the missionary rally day, and so I told Jean, okay, today we're going to wear our Burkina clothes. And so we dressed up in these really bright green cloth, and we went to the missionary rally, and there we found other people wearing the same clothes. Looked a little bit different than ours. You can't see Jeannie's skirt, but it's there. She's wearing it. It's interesting what kind of connection can grow just by wearing the exact same cloth. Right? People I'd never met before, we glommed onto each other for a little bit. Look, I'm wearing you, we're together. We've experienced some of the same things. And they're saying, well, when were you in Burkina? And I got to tell my story, and these people, they had spent their whole life there as missionaries, connected just by the clothes. When this man is naked, living in the tombs, he's talking about it's a picture for us of all of Satan's work to destroy the relationships within his life. His personality even, taken over by these evil spirits. It's the spirits that speak to Jesus. He is not in control of himself. Satan wants to not only destroy relationships, he wants to destroy restraint. According to Jewish teachers in Jesus' day, there were 4 signs of madness. They were walking abroad at night, spending the night on a grave, tearing one's clothes, and destroying what was given to them. This man shows all 4 signs. People know what his problem is. He has thrown off all restraint and is only interested in destruction, including harming himself. It tells us that night and day he was in the tombs and no one was able to help him. No one was able to subdue him. Not even other people could help him control himself or restrain him. These fits of rage, self-destructive patterns, anger, frustration, pain, all kinds of self-abuse. When we look around us today, right, you see how difficult it is for people to really act out in their own best self-interests. Satan's power in our relationships, removing restraint. We know that God's grace is given so that not only could we be saved, but that we could begin to make choices that reflect God's goodness toward us, to live out his hope and his help, to say yes and no to the right things in our lives. Titus said it this way, "For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age." Satan doesn't want any of that. He wants us to throw off restraint. Ultimately, he wants to destroy life. Jesus talked about him in this way, talking about Satan as a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. Satan's goal is ultimate destruction. He wants this man dead. But before he takes his life, he wants him to suffer. He wants to suffer as much as possible, and he wants to inflict suffering on others through him. Satan's work. Destroy relationships, destroy restraint, ultimately destroy life. And what tool is Satan's main tool within his arsenal? Satan's tool is the lie. It's the lie. The lie about what God intends and his grace available to you. The lie about what will bring satisfaction and hope and depth into your life. Be aware. Be aware of Satan's power and the goals that he wants to bring. When you look around in our society today and you see those forces at work destroying relationships, recognize that's Satan's goal. When you see those forces around you that call to throw off restraint, to live in every way possible, to look in every source for satisfaction, recognize who motivates that kind of activity. When you see people acting in self-destructive ways, When you see those kind of tendencies in our world around us today, recognize Satan's still at work. Satan's power is still seeking people's destruction. When you're aware of Satan's power, though, be also aware that Satan's power has limits. The interaction that Jesus has with the demons in control of this man clearly show that their power, and that they recognize that their power has a challenge. Right? When Jesus enters into their region, the demons are clearly on the defensive. Right? When this man sees Jesus from a distance, he runs up to him. He falls on his knees in front of him. And he shouts at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." So it is that this demon seems to identify who Jesus is, right? He understands that there is one that has come in from that he cannot get away from, that he must come into his presence. His only hope is to try and deflect him with kind of flowery talk or with some kind of begging before him. It demonstrates an awareness of who Jesus is and bows at Jesus' feet and shouts out Jesus' name. And Jesus is going to have none of that, right? He doesn't encourage this demon. He simply asks him, "What's your name?" The man has to reply. The demon has to reply. He identifies himself of what's going on. You see, Jesus is God's Son. He is the ultimate answer. He has more power. And the demons ultimately must obey Jesus. Jesus is clearly in control of this encounter. He commands the evil spirits to come out, and they obey. Note that they can only go where Jesus allows. And it tells us that he'd already commanded the evil spirits to come out. They know they have to come out, and they begin to beg Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. And instead, they want to go into these pigs. And I always wondered, what's going on here? Is Jesus being soft on the demons, right? Shouldn't he just get rid of them? Shouldn't he just send them, right, to some other place? Things like that. And I don't have great answers for that. But certainly, Jesus demonstrates his control. The demons go where he tells them or allows them to go. There is victory demonstrated, and they're fleeing illustrated when they go into these demons and into the pigs, and the pigs rush into the lake, ultimately bringing the destruction that people can see. It exposes maybe the intent and the nature, the destructive nature of these demons. It does serve to get the attention of the people. If the demons would have just left the area, the people maybe wouldn't have been as confronted with Jesus' authority as when they saw the pigs rush to their own death. Satan's destructive power is a reality in our world today. We see it around us, and to think that you and I are immune to its influence is to be unprepared and ill-equipped for the challenges of life. For all of us, we see and experience that destructive work of sin. We experience it in sickness and suffering and in the death that comes, in the difficulties within our own relationships, in even the challenges we face in our own sense of self-control. For all of us, we need to recognize that within and under the authority of Jesus, there comes freedom. This is where the man illustrates our own goal, the invitation that Christ extends to each one of us. Comes as not only we're aware of Satan's power, but we're committed to Christ's authority. Why was Jesus even in this area? We think this region of the Gerasenes is a Gentile area, and Jesus often says things like, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel." And I think the answer is clearly in what Jesus does. It seems like the whole purpose of Jesus getting his his disciples into the boat, the experience of the storm and all those kind of things that ultimately he stills, and the place that they arrive at is to free this man from Satan's power. To minister to this one individual, Jesus endures all of those other things. Another thing, I think you have to, at least at some level, say that Jesus cares about this man. This man that is so miserable, so naked, uncontrollable, dirty, smelly. Right? Jesus cares about him. He comes here, I think, to find him. He exercises his authority over him. He willingly ministers to him. So just for a moment, think about this man and think about Jesus, this huge contrast between who they are. You know, there's, on one hand, there is this demoniac, the Gerasene demoniac, right? Who is completely under the control of all of these evil spirits. On the other hand is Jesus. And you picture just a continuum between these two. And if we would look at them, and we would say, well, I wonder where I am between this thing, between this demonized guy completely under control and Jesus. I think an honest appraisal of where we stand is clearly toward his end of things. I believe that you and I are or have been much worse than we think we are. The human nature is often one that wants to minimize our own faults and ignore our own responses. But for most of us, and maybe you're the exception, we're way closer to the demoniac than we are to Jesus. But Jesus, on the other end, cares about you. He cares about me much more than we might imagine. Just as much as Jesus was willing to go out of his way to reach this man, so for you, Jesus too cares that much. Yes, Jesus cared about this man, and he cares about each one of us, willing to bridge any gap, to come minister to within any circumstance, no matter what we might think about ourselves. Jesus cares about this man, and Jesus changes this man. Jesus' work, Jesus' influence, his activity on his behalf is awe-inspiring, right? The people from the town hear about what's happened, right? It tells us that when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by a legion of demons. He was sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Three contrasts, right, after Jesus' ministry to this man. One, he's sitting. He's sitting there. He's not raging about the tombs. He's not coming to Jesus' feet and crying out. He just has found a place of peace in his life because of Jesus' ministry to him. He's able to control himself. He's unbound and in control. He can move freely, safely, productively as God intends. You see, the peace and freedom that Jesus wants to bring is intended to bring us to his feet, to recognize his handiwork in our lives, to be able to sit in Jesus' presence. You think of that? Christ's authority isn't one that wants us to come and he wants to make us miserable. He wants to make us, present with him. Jesus changes this man. He's now sitting at Jesus' feet. Secondly, he's clothed, right? No longer naked. Where do you think he got those clothes from? Well, from Jesus or from his disciples. They either went and bought them or they had some change of clothes with them that they shared with him. Jesus supplies the clothes. That's a great picture, isn't it? Of what Jesus intends. He has what the man needs, and he makes him fit again for society, for his continuing influence, for the next steps that Jesus has for him. He changes the man. He's sitting, he's clothed, and he's He's sane, right? He's in his right mind. He's able to understand and learn and reflect on his experiences. He's able to grasp who Jesus is for himself. He doesn't need the demons crying out Jesus' identity for him. He recognizes the one who has touched him. He is now able to participate in what goes on around him. He's been freed by the power of Jesus' work. If you remember those verses in John where Jesus talks about freedom, he says, if you hold to my teachings, you are really my disciples, and then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Right? I mean, how often have you heard the last phrase, right? The truth will set you free, and you miss that part about knowing him and his teachings and following his as a disciple. Right? That's where the truth comes in that frees you as you understand who Jesus is. And in that same passage, Jesus goes on to respond to a question they ask, and he says, very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Jesus there puts the connection of freedom right into the context of a relationship, a family that he comes into. That's why when we talk about following Christ, we're not just talking about agreeing to some ideas or going through some ritual within the church. We're talking about a relationship between, God as our Father, and we come into his family. We begin to take on the characteristics of Christ as, in a sense, our brother, one that we share the challenge of living in the family with. And it's that free choice that we make to come and be one of his, and then we focus then on what it looks like to live within that family. It's the right mind that this man has had restored, and it's the mind of Christ that comes for each one of us. That's that challenge of the Christian life, to recognize not only the relationships, but the connections that come out of that relationship that enables us to live, to learn, and to grow as one of God's families. In this story, right, there's not just an act of mercy, but a testimony to Christ's authority that becomes the focus of this man's heart and his life. Everybody in the town sees that this man has been changed by something that Christ has done, by his exercise of authority. So what do? Do they come out to Jesus and with these wide eyes of wonder say to him, wow, how did you do this? What does this mean? Can you help my friend? Can you help this man who's struggling? Do they bring to him their questions? Do they bring others in need to him? Nope. So the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. Can you imagine that? Maybe you don't have to imagine that. Maybe you've experienced those times in your life where you knew exactly what Jesus was offering, and you very clearly said no. Maybe you've seen others who know and have tasted and experienced and been part of the blessings of God's family, and yet chose to reject the leading and the life that Jesus offered to them. And Jesus doesn't try and change the crowd's mind. He doesn't stay there and say, well, let me show you some more. Let me do another miracle. Can I just stay and talk a little bit more? Let's have a discussion about this. Instead, Jesus begins to prepare to leave. They don't want him. Jesus leaves. It seems that they prefer pigs to Jesus' authority. And Jesus allows them to make that choice. Doesn't mean he doesn't care. It just means that in the moment, people can reject his authority. There's one piece before Jesus leaves the region that talks about the freedom that this man experienced. We'll talk about it with this kind of closing summary, that Jesus not only cares about this man, he changes this man, and ultimately he commissions this man. It tells us that as Jesus was getting to the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begs to go with him. And Jesus didn't let him. And he said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. This is an amazing passage for the book of Mark. Here Jesus commissions a Gentile, a man who had previously been known for being a demoniac, right? Or being completely out of control, as his witness. And the man goes through the whole region of Decapolis, the whole region of the 10 cities in that area, becomes famous for this story of deliverance. Of a man who encountered Jesus and finds Jesus freeing him to live life in a new way, in freedom, serving Jesus. This Gentile missionary sharing a story of deliverance, testifying to the power and authority of Jesus. It is an amazing moment. But more than that, it's a picture of what Jesus invites all of us into. His freeing work exercised on the part of his people to invite them in to experience his work and share that story to the world around you. Do you have a freeing story? Do you have that sense? That moment in which God entered into your life and he freed you. He said, "I know that you're struggling in this area. I've come to be the answer to that struggle. I've come to free you from, the guilt of your past. I've come to free you from those sins that so easily beset you. I have come to free you to a heart that's open to my word and my work in a new way that you've never experienced before, and that invitation never ends. To come and experience God's continuing work. But it's not just about you. God's freeing work is never about just what he wants to do inside the hidden places of your own heart, in your own experience, your own habits. All of God's work is always intended to flow not only into you, but from you into the lives of other people around you. God's work in you is never about just you. And maybe that's part of the reason that it's so important for you to take the challenge, for you to rise up and embrace God's freeing work with both hands and grab onto it and honor it, not only for what it does for you, but because people around you need to see it. People in your own home need to be impacted by it. People within your workplace, within your neighborhood, within your sphere of influence, within your own 10 cities, need to hear about a Jesus that frees you. Because as much as you need it, they need it too. So today, it's not just about a man whose life is changed, who is totally comes under the influence of Christ's authority. It's about Christ's authority in every one of our hearts and lives. For Jesus cares about us and those things that challenge us. And he wants to bring that same change that reflects his work into every heart and life. So So just for a moment, I encourage you to stop. Take this challenge of the freeing work of Christ to heart. Maybe you've become more aware this morning of some of the challenges that you're facing. Situations out of your control, problems that seem like they have no answer, habits that are out of your own control. You're a slave, in a sense, to them. Destructive work in different ways that Satan wants to use in your heart and life. But you know that Satan's work has limits, and that you can bring those areas under the authority of Jesus Christ, and He will deliver you. He cares about you. He wants to take those problems and He wants to use them in your life to expand His authority. So in this moment, I would invite you to simply take those problems. I don't know what they are. It could be anything, from relational problems to personal habits to struggles of guilt from the past. I want you to bring them to Jesus. I want you to admit to Him that you cannot deal with these problems on your own. Maybe you've been trying to for your whole life long. For years and years and years, they've been a problem. But I want you to hold them up to Jesus. And I want you to simply tell Him, Lord, I cannot deal with these, but I bring them to you, and I ask that you would take them, that by your authority you would do a new work. Forgiveness, cleansing, redirecting, providing. God, through Christ's sacrifice on the cross, has what you need and what I need. And He will work. But you have to release them to His authority. You have to bring them under His work, under His blood, under His directing power. And then you have to be willing to let Him take them. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you have sent your Son to provide freedom, and that your promise is that the one that your Son sets free, they will be free indeed. Lord, I know that we struggle, and that Satan wants to get his hand and his control into even our own hearts and lives by his deceitful lies. Lord, today I pray for his hand to be defeated in each one of our hearts and lives, for you to take your rightful place, and that Jesus to be the one in charge of our hearts, the one in charge of our dreams, the one in charge of our activities. Lord, I would pray, again, that your authority would be complete in our hearts and lives and in this church family. So now's your chance. Just take a moment to surrender those things to Christ's authority and to receive by an act of faith the freedom that Jesus offers to each one of us. And just as Jesus acted on this day in the region of the Gerasenes, so today he acts in the hearts and lives that come. Sit at his feet and receive his authority. So, Father, thank you. Thank you for your freeing work at work, even in this place today. We receive it. And thank you for it. And would ask that it could result in your glory, in your praise from our hearts, seen in the world around us. In your name I ask it. Amen. Amen. So freedom is a challenging topic. It's one that grows in the hearts and lives of God's people. If you're interested in getting together and praying together about areas of freedom that are a struggle for you, maybe as we're dismissed, you could just simply say to me, hey, give me a call this week. You could take perhaps one of the information cards that are in some of the racks of the benches in front of you, and you could write your name and just hand it to me afterwards and say, hey, why don't you give me a call? And I'd be happy to do that in this coming week. We're going to close with a hymn. It's number 46 in your hymnals. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing, right? The triumphs of God's grace, the freedom that Christ brings to prisoners who are set free by his glory. Why don't you stand? We're going to sing all 6 verses in closing. Number 46, Oh, for 1,000 tongues. Tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise, the glories of my God and King, the triumphs of his grace. My gracious Master and my God, assist me to proclaim, to spread through all the earth abroad the honors of thy name. Jesus, the name that charms our fears, that sets the prisoner free. With music in the sinner's ear, 'tis life and health and peace. He breaks the power of canceled sin. He sets the prisoners free. His blood can make the foulest clean. His blood availed for me. Hear him, ye deaf, his praise ye dumb. Your loosened tongue sing glory. Ye blind, behold your Savior come, and leap ye lame for joy. Glory to God and praise and love be ever, ever given. My saints below and saints above, the church in earth and heaven. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. Lord, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his face towards you and give you peace as you go with a sense of his freedom, embracing his authority over every area of your life. For his name's sake and glory. Amen. May you go in peace.